Hey everyone, welcome back to Rugadoom, where the dark isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet enough to read by. Tonight's story marks the beginning of something new, a collection we're calling the Phobia series, stories that peel back the fears buried deepest in us all, each one named for the thing we wish we didn't fear, but do. And this first one is called Bibliophobia, the fear of books. It was written by me. It starts in a used bookstore on a rain-slick night where one clerk finds a book that shouldn't exist, a book that reads him back. So settle in, let the rain fall, and remember, some stories don't wait to be read, they read you. If you enjoy tales that crawl under your skin and stay there, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join the darkness here on Rugadoom, where every fear eventually finds a name. Rain threads down the bookstore window like silver veins, twitching with every gust. It's the kind of rain that turns the whole world soft and distant. Outside, headlights blur to white smudges, and even the street traffic sounds like it's coming from underwater. I'm supposed to be closing up, but I've been staring at a frozen cursor on the inventory screen for, I don't know, minutes, maybe longer. The bottom corner of the monitor says 11:42 p.m., 12 minutes until I lock the doors. No customers, no footsteps. Only the slow, aching groans of the old building as it shifted in its sleep, like some ancient, timber-boned beast dreaming beneath the floorboards. The air felt heavy with stillness, thick with the scent of old paper and rain-damp dust, as if time had curled up in the corners and stopped breathing. Thorne's Used and Rare isn't the kind of bookstore you stumble into off the street. It hides between a shuttered tailor's shop and an incense place that's never open, its windows crowded with sun-faded first editions and strange little trinkets no one remembers pricing. Inside, it feels more like a reliquary than a store. 3 long aisles of floor-to-ceiling shelves, each one slightly warped with age. The smell hits you first: old paper, binding glue, something fainter and harder to name, like dried herbs or the skin of forgotten fruit. Some customers call it cozy. I've worked here 2 years, and I still feel like I'm being swallowed whole every time I walk in, like I'm walking down a throat lined with spines. Something about the way the stacks curve, the way the shadows collect, like it always feels like there's something waiting just out of sight, watching me scan barcodes, watching me breathe. I stretch until my back cracks. Muscle memory nudges me through the final checklist. Sweep the front, lock the back, check the cart of stray books. The cart looks empty tonight, not just unused, but more empty than usual, like even the air around it has stepped back. No dog-eared paperbacks from the philosophy shelf, no abandoned cookbooks or mystery novels with cracked spines. Just a metal frame with its wire shelves yawning bare under the amber light. Amidst the darkness of the cart, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A book. How did I miss that? It sat nestled at the bottom, almost tucked into the shadows like it didn't want to be found. I pulled it out and turned it over in my hands. A black, leather-bound book. No title, no author, no embossed markings or lettering of any kind. I ran my fingers over the front cover, and it felt warm. Not like it had just been shelved, but like it had been resting in the lap of a reader on a long, winding journey. That warmth comforted me in a strange, nostalgic way, and yet something beneath it felt wrong, otherworldly, like something pretending to be familiar, like something watching me from beneath the skin of the leather. I reached to open the book, and something deep inside me recoiled, a cold, instinctive lurch that rose from my gut like a held breath, turning sour. Don't. The feeling didn't come as a thought, but as a warning burned into the marrow of my bones, like I was about to open a door that was never meant to be opened. A door with something behind it, something old and wrong and hungry, something that wanted to end me. But against my better judgment, against the sheer weight of that quiet ancient no, I opened it. Alex Mercer was 8 years old when he drowned the neighbor's cat. The words pulled something loose. A memory I had buried deep in the back of my mind rose to the surface, raw and uninvited. I remembered picking up the neighbor's cat, the sting of its claws across my wrist and neck, the way its eyes narrowed like it knew it had the upper hand. I remembered the hot flush of immature retribution, the way I tried to punish it by tossing it into the rain barrel. I didn't mean to kill it. I only wanted to scare it. But the moment it hit the water and began to thrash, something inside me froze. I couldn't move. I couldn't save it. I just stood there and watched it drown. The guilt that followed was immediate, sickening, and absolute. I never told anyone, not my mother, not my friends, not even myself. Not really. I just buried it and tried to forget. I stared at the sentence on the page and read it again and again. My eyes refused to move past it. The words made my blood feel like ice, seeping through my veins, locking every muscle in place. It was like the book had reached into my chest and opened something that was never meant to be touched. I shut the book quickly. Then I opened it again, flipped to the inside cover, checked the back, the spine, the corners. There was nothing. No author, no publisher, no barcode or library stamp. Just that one sentence waiting for me again when I flipped back to the first page. I leaned in close and took a breath. The pages smelled faintly of fresh ink, sharp and chemical, like something that hadn't fully dried, like it had been printed only moments ago. Okay, I muttered to myself, trying to shake the chill out of my voice. Creepy. Someone's screwing with me. Really funny. But even as I said it, I didn't look away. I kept staring at the page like it might change again if I blinked. Like it was waiting for me to acknowledge something I didn't want to. I set it down on the counter and stepped back. I had every intention of leaving it there and finishing my shift. I was going to sweep, count the register, lock the doors, forget it existed. Then the cover creaked open again. There was no air moving hard enough to open the book, no breeze, no draft, yet the cover snapped open with a loud thud against the counter. Then the pages began to turn, not all at once, not in a flutter, but slowly, deliberately, one after another, as if some unseen hand was flipping through them. They stopped near the middle. From where I stood, I saw ink begin to appear, letters taking shape, words arranging themselves on the blank paper in real time, as if being written just for me. Do I dare approach? Do I dare read it? I shouldn't. Every atom in my body screamed to close the book, to leave, to pretend none of this was happening. But I didn't move away. I moved closer. Slowly. Carefully. With the kind of cautious reverence someone might use to approach a bear in the woods, knowing that one wrong move could be the end. I looked down at the page. There, written in pristine, steady handwriting. He put the book down and lied to himself he would not read any more of it. I didn't move at first. I just stood there, staring, trying to convince myself I was wrong, that I had misread it, that my eyes were playing tricks on me. Maybe I was tired. Maybe the store lights were reflecting strangely. Maybe I needed sleep, food, anything but this. Then I reached out and touched the page. It felt wrong how normal it was, smooth, cool, dry, like any other book, like nothing had happened. I flipped forward. Dozens of blank pages stared back at me, clean and untouched. No writing, no ink, no proof. I flipped back to the page where the line had been. It was gone, but something else had taken its place. Alex kept denying what he was seeing with his eyes, but he knew what he saw was true. I stood there in the stillness, the words sinking into me like a slow poison. The room felt heavier than it had moments before, as if the light itself had thickened, dimmed by something I couldn't name. The silence had taken on a presence of its own, not peaceful, not passive, but watchful. Nothing had moved, yet I felt the subtle shift of something tilting just beneath the surface of the ordinary bending reality, in ways I wasn't meant to notice. The front door rattled in its frame. Just the wind. Probably, but it still made me flinch. I closed the book, more forcefully this time, and shoved it into the drawer beneath the register. The wood groaned as it slid shut. I turned off the lights. The overheads went dark, and the store dropped into a quieter kind of silence, the kind that feels like it's waiting for something. I turned the key in the lock and twisted hard. The door resisted the way it always did. The frame warped just enough to catch and groan before finally giving way with a reluctant, cracking click. For a second, I had the strange feeling that the door didn't want to be locked, that it had been holding something in, not out. I flipped the sign to closed and drew the blinds. Outside, the rain had thickened into a solid sheet of silver, pouring down in long, glassy strands. It hit the windows with a whispering hiss that sounded too steady, too controlled, not natural or chaotic. Like something was out there imitating weather, trying to get the tone of it right, trying to be convincing. I grabbed my jacket from the hook, slung it over one shoulder, and made my way to the back. My footsteps sounded muffled now, swallowed by the strange density in the air. I reached the rear door and checked the bolt, still locked, still secure, still exactly how it should be. But for some reason it felt like I had checked too late, like something had already come through. I turned back toward the front, ready to kill the lights and get the hell out of there. I stopped cold. The drawer I had slammed shut, the one that groaned and clicked into place, was hanging wide open. The book sat on the counter again, perfectly centered, open to a new page. The book sat exactly where I had placed it earlier, though not by choice. I had shoved it into the drawer, forced it shut with enough weight to hear the wood groan, but now it was out again, calmly resting in the center of the counter, open like it had never been touched. Its spine curved slightly, the pages spread as though it had been sitting there all along, quietly waiting. There had been no sound, no creak of the drawer, no whisper of paper. The store remained silent, but the book had moved, not in a way that suggested it had been disturbed, but in a way that suggested it had returned. I stepped closer, my breath shallow, as though even exhaling too loudly might disturb whatever was happening. The page before me was blank, smooth. Then, without warning, ink began to emerge across its surface. It didn't bleed or soak through. It appeared precisely and deliberately, forming letters one after another in elegant, measured strokes. I watched the sentence come to life in real time, unfolding with eerie clarity, as if the book wasn't just documenting this moment, it was thinking its way through it. He stood frozen, unsure of how the drawer had opened again. He told himself maybe he hadn't locked it, maybe the tilt of the building made it slide open. But he didn't believe that. Not really. I stared at the line, my eyes locked on the words, willing them to vanish the same way the others had. I told myself it had to be some trick of ink or pressure or heat, something with a rational explanation. But deep down, I knew better. The sentence didn't fade. It stayed, dark and permanent, like it had always been there, like it belonged more than I did. I flipped ahead through the book, faster now, my fingers trembling as I turned page after page. All of them were blank, smooth and silent, like freshly fallen snow. Nothing else had been written, nothing else at all. I flipped back to the one that had written itself right in front of me. It was empty. The page was clean again. No trace of ink, no indentation. No sign it had ever held anything at all. I felt something cold tighten in my chest, like invisible strings being pulled taut. My heart beat too fast, too loud. I could feel it in my throat. I slammed the book shut and stepped back. "Why me?" I said, louder than I meant to. My voice echoed off the shelves, sharp and brittle in the silence. I stared down at the closed book, the edges of its pages still faintly glowing in the low light. "What do you want from me?" I didn't expect an answer, not really, but slowly, almost gently, The book opened again on its own. Ink slid across the page with quiet confidence, like a pen being guided by an invisible hand. Wrong place, wrong time. The front door slammed once against its frame, loud enough to shake the glass. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't subtle. It sounded like a fist. One heavy, deliberate hit that echoed through the store and stopped there, hanging in the silence like a warning. Whoever was out there didn't want to come in. They wanted me to know they already could. I turned slowly, my pulse hammering in my ears, the sound of it almost louder than the impact had been. The blinds were still drawn, but something about the light bleeding through them looked wrong. It was thinner somehow, washed out and gray, like the world outside had been drained of color while I wasn't looking. When I looked back at the counter, the book was no longer open. It had closed itself again. It sat perfectly still, too still, as if it had never moved at all. But there was something about its stillness that felt deliberate, the kind of quiet you see in an animal before it decides whether or not to pounce. I flipped the light switch off again, and nothing happened. I tried it twice more, slower each time, like hesitation might change the outcome. But the lights stayed on. They didn't flicker or dim or even buzz. They just glowed steadily, warm and soft like always, but now that warmth felt wrong. It felt designed, less like light and more like something trying to imitate it. The store was no longer just lit. It was being illuminated for me. I walked to the back and opened the breaker panel. All the switches were in their proper place. When I flipped the main power off, the lights didn't react. They kept glowing, untouched, like they were no longer connected to the wires in the walls. The silence around me felt too still, too expectant, as if the building itself was waiting for something I hadn't yet given it. Then I heard it again, a creak from deep in the stacks. Not random, not a shift in old wood. It sounded like someone moving. I turned toward the aisles, my heart beginning to race. Another step came, slow and soft, closer than before. I backed behind the counter and reached for the phone. It was the only thing that felt normal, solid. I dialed Harlan and waited, straight to voicemail. I hung up without leaving a message because there was nothing to say. Another creak followed, closer this time, right behind one of the tall shelves. I stepped out from the counter and leaned into the aisle, but no one was there. I turned back to grab my bag so I could leave, and that's when I saw it. The book was sitting on top of it. It hadn't fallen. It hadn't been tossed. It had been placed neatly, dead center, like it belonged there, and I hadn't heard a sound. I stood completely still, staring at it, feeling my pulse rise into my throat. Then the front door chimed. My eyes darted to the entrance. The deadbolt was still locked, but someone was standing just inside the doorway. He wasn't fully in or fully out. He stood halfway through the threshold like the doorframe had become a barrier between two separate worlds. Rain poured behind him in a frozen curtain, the drops hanging mid-air, motionless, like glass beads caught in a photograph. The man wore a gray coat, his head lowered, water streaming from his hair. He had no umbrella, no expression. His hands rested at his sides. I couldn't see his face. "Sir, we're closed," I called out, my voice unsteady. He didn't respond. He didn't move. But I saw his posture shift, his shoulders rising slightly like he was about to step forward. Without thinking, I dropped behind the counter and yanked open the drawer, instinct pulling me to reach for something familiar, something that could protect me. I didn't know what I was looking for, a flashlight, a box cutter, something solid to hold on to. The drawer was empty. I looked back up. The book was no longer on my backpack. It was on the counter now, open and waiting. I turned back toward the door. The man was gone. No footsteps, no sound, just the faint sway of the window blinds and the echo of something leaving without ever truly arriving. I didn't remember opening the blinds. I didn't remember unlocking anything. I stepped closer to the counter. The book lay still, its pages spread, a new line written in that same clean, deliberate ink. He stares at the book again. This time he reads it. He doesn't stop. and when he does, it's already too late. I slammed it shut, harder than before. I ran to the front door, grabbed the lock with both hands, and twisted. The bolt turned, but the door refused to open. It didn't rattle. It didn't resist. It simply stayed shut, like the doorframe had fused together. No cracks, no movement. It was sealed. Behind me, I heard it again, that soft, slow creak of the book opening by itself. I turned. The pages had shifted. Another line had appeared. Alex turns around slowly, one hand still on the lock. I was still turning when I read it, still facing the counter, still watching as the book described exactly what I was doing, in real time, without pause or error. I stepped back from it. The page rippled. I stepped forward. Another line appeared. Alex leans closer, eyes wide, afraid to blink. I blinked anyway. The book kept going. He blinks, still trying to disprove it, still pretending he can stop it. A cold sweat broke across my back. My legs felt unsteady. The lights above me hummed in the silence, and the floor beneath my feet felt thinner, like something was pressing upward from below. Another line began to appear on the page. He drops the book. "No," I whispered. I clutched it harder, as if squeezing it might stop the words from forming. The sentence shifted. He clutches the book tighter, refusing the command. It was reacting, responding to me, not predicting, recording. It was watching. I dropped it. The book hit the floor with a dull thud, its pages fanning wide. More ink appeared immediately, like it had been waiting for my hands to let go. He tells himself to run. He almost does. But he doesn't. I ran. I sprinted down the center aisle, passing shelf after shelf, the shadows rushing past like they were moving instead of me. The emergency exit loomed ahead. I hit it full force. Nothing. I slammed my shoulder into it again. Still nothing. The lights snapped off, all of them. Darkness dropped over the store like a curtain. I stood in place, panting, straining to see, my ears filled with the sound of my own heartbeat. Then, ahead of me, a soft glow appeared, flickering low to the ground, faint and rhythmic, like something was breathing. It was the book, open again, and now it glowed from within. I took a step toward it, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know what else to do. A whisper brushed the side of my face. Not a voice exactly, just a shape in the air that felt like a word. Yes. I turned sharply. No one. Only shadows. Only rows of books and silence. But the silence had changed. It was no longer absence. It was attention. I dug into my bag and pulled out my keys, my fingers finding the one for the basement access. I turned and unlocked the door, then stepped down into the dark. The air was colder there, still, and the walls pressed in tighter than I remembered. Pipes ran along the ceiling. Cardboard boxes and broken cabinets lined the walls. I found the fuse box and flipped the main breaker again. Nothing. Then my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. A single notification. The Notes app. I hadn't used it in days. I opened it. For a moment, the screen was blank. Then a single line appeared. He reads this line on the screen in the dark, in the basement, alone. I dropped the phone. It cracked against the floor and skidded into the dark. I stumbled back, breathing too fast, too loud, then turned blindly through the space, pushing past a hanging sheet of plastic into the rear storage. And there it was, the book, sitting on the floor, open, unburned, dry, waiting. I picked it up with shaking hands. A line appeared as I touched it. He drowns it now. I didn't stop to think. I turned, ran up the basement stairs, pushed through the back hallway, and shoved open the alley door. Rain hit me instantly, cold and heavy, the wind pulling at my clothes. I ran to the dumpster and dropped to my knees in the wet gravel. The lid creaked as I opened it. Without hesitation, I hurled the book inside, burying it beneath soggy cardboard and broken bags. Water poured over it. I stayed there for several minutes, soaked to the bone, waiting for something, anything, to change. Eventually, I stood and went back inside. The store was quiet now. For a moment, I believed I had done it. that it was over. I walked slowly toward the counter. The book was there, perfectly dry, open again. A new line waited on the page. He thinks the rain can drown me. He thinks distance matters. He thinks fear stays outside with the garbage. He is wrong. I did not remember walking home. I remembered the rain, the way it came down in sheets so thick I could barely see across the street. I remembered the wind pulling at my jacket, cold and sharp, and the hum of the streetlights that buzzed like insects trapped in jars. But I did not remember the walk itself. I just remembered the distance folding around me, one street blending into the next, until suddenly I was unlocking my apartment door. I stepped inside and locked it behind me, then locked it again. I checked the windows, each one twice. The deadbolt on the back door, the latch on the fire escape, the sliding chain that never quite fit the frame. I checked them all, then checked them again. The air inside felt thin and warm, like it had been waiting for me. The clock on the kitchen wall read 2:36 a.m. I turned on every light in the apartment. I needed brightness, not comfort, the kind of light that left nothing hidden, the kind that erased shadows. My apartment was small, a one-bedroom above an alley with a galley kitchen and a couch I had pulled from a curb 3 years ago. Books were stacked on every surface. Cold mugs of tea crowded the table. Dishes waited in the sink. It was all normal. Then I looked at the coffee table. The book was there. It had followed me, or maybe it had never left. It sat exactly where I had not placed it, open and dry and watching. I poured a shot of bourbon, swallowed it fast, and felt nothing. Not warmth, not calm, just the slow, tightening coil of something closing around my ribs. I sat down across from it. I didn't touch it. I just watched. It did not move. The page stayed open, but no new words appeared. For a moment I believed that maybe it had stopped. Maybe it had written what it came to write. Maybe it had finished. The digital clock on the shelf blinked softly. 2:41. I picked up my phone. No signal. No Wi-Fi. The screen dimmed without warning and stayed dim. I tossed it onto the couch and turned my attention back to the table. The book had not moved. I could destroy it, tear it apart page by page, soak it, burn it, cut it. But something inside me whispered that none of it would matter, that none of it would ever matter. Because the book was not reacting to what I did. The book was reacting to what I was. I reached forward and opened it fully. It offered no resistance. It turned to the final page on its own. Only one line had been written, centered cleanly near the top in the same calm, unhurried ink. He dies at 3:08 a.m. My chest went still. It was not fear exactly, not panic. It was something quieter, something colder, like a verdict that had always been written, only now spoken out loud. I looked at the clock. 2:44. I closed the book, then opened it again. I flipped backward through the pages. There was more now. I had not seen these lines before, but they were there, written in the same exact hand. After returning home, Alex drinks to calm his nerves. He tries to act normal. He tells himself this is all nonsense, that none of it can hurt him, but his hands are shaking. They were. I pressed them flat to my thighs. They trembled under the pressure. I opened my fingers, still shaking. I got up and went to the kitchen. I opened every drawer, found scissors, grabbed the largest, heaviest pair I owned. I returned to the book and shoved the blades deep between the pages. The steel snapped. The book didn't bend, it didn't tear, it didn't so much as wrinkle. I pulled the scissors free and hurled the book across the room. It hit the wall with a soft final sound. When I turned around, it was on the table again, open and waiting. New words appeared before I could sit. He tries to destroy it, but nothing works, because it is already written. He does not realize. Everything has already been written. I stood there, staring, while the clock behind me blinked quietly toward 2:48, 20 minutes. That was all that remained. I whispered to myself that it was a dream, a hallucination, some sort of break. I repeated it like a prayer. I told myself this could not be real. This was not real. The book did not move. It did not need to. I went to the bedroom, pulled on my shoes, stuffed my phone into my jacket pocket, and walked back out. The window was open. I had not opened it. The night air curled into the room in thin fingers, brushing my ankles. The blinds swayed. I looked down. More words had appeared. He runs, but he does not get far, because that is not how this ends. The clock read 2:53. I sat again. I waited. I told myself I did not have to look, but I did. I turned the page. He reads because he was always going to read. He fears because he was always going to fear. He dies because he was always going to die. I placed my hand on the blank space below those words. It pulsed beneath my palm. I pulled my hand back. Ink began to appear, letter by letter, word by word. 3:08. He is sitting on the couch when the knock comes. Just one knock. He opens the door. That is all it takes. He does not scream. I stood up and unplugged the clock from the wall. I smashed it. I checked my phone again. The screen was dead. I checked the stove, the microwave, every appliance in the apartment. None of them worked. Time no longer belonged to me. I walked in circles. I checked the windows, the locks. I sat down. I stood again. The book continued. He paces. He checks the windows. He comes back to the book. I flipped to the first page. Alex Mercer was 8 years old when he drowned the neighbor's cat. I flipped to the next. He turns the page. Each one followed me. I turned faster. The story never stopped. I reached the final page. There was only one line left. 3:08. I looked toward the apartment door. It looked larger now. The edges of the frame seemed to bend outward, like the wood was being pulled from inside, like something was pressing against it. The book was quiet. The clock was dead. The room was silent. I had no way of knowing what time it was, but I felt it approaching like a weight descending. I backed into the farthest corner of the living room, facing the door. My shoulders touched the wall. My hands curled into fists. The book lay open on the table, its pages moving gently, as if breathing. It turned the final page for me. New words appeared. He stands there, frozen. He does not speak. He does not scream. He waits for it, because the knock is coming. And then the door opens. My voice cracked. I won't open it. The book did not respond. The air in the room seemed to pause. I braced my body against the door, locked it again, slid the chain across. I placed both hands flat against the wood and leaned in with my full weight. The book fluttered once, a soft sound behind me like a page being turned in another room. He leans against the door, as if that will help, as if anything can change now. I closed my eyes. Silence, not the quiet of an empty room, but the quiet of something listening. A knock, one single deliberate knock. It did not come from the hallway, it came from the inside. The doorknob turned under my hand, slow and steady. I pressed down hard, but it kept moving, smooth and confident. The lock clicked open. The door began to creak wide. No hallway, no night. Only a space that did not belong anywhere. Something stepped through. No footsteps, no sound, only presence. I fell back into the couch. The book sat open on the table. Words appeared. He sits. He sees what comes through. He does not scream, because he understands now. The figure reached out. Its hand touched my shoulder. The page turned. The final line waited. Alex Mercer was 8 years old when he drowned the neighbor's cat.